The December wind cut through the empty train platform like frozen razors. Elena Rivera pulled her thin jacket tighter around her body, but it did nothing against the bitter cold that seeped into her bones. The digital clock above the station entrance blinked 11:47 p.m., each passing minute feeling like an eternity. Christmas Eve had turned into a nightmare. She sat on the concrete bench, her breath creating small clouds that disappeared into the darkness. Everyone else had left hours ago, rushing home to families, to warmth, to love. The last train had departed at 11:20, taking with it her final hope of getting home on her own. Her phone lay dead in her pocket, a useless piece of metal and glass. Her wallet was gone, stolen on the crowded subway by a hand she never saw. Just a jostle, a bump in the holiday rush, and everything she needed to survive this night had vanished. But worst of all, Tyler hadn't come. Her boyfriend of 18 months had promised to pick her up. She had called him 17 times from the station payphone, leaving increasingly desperate messages. Each call went straight to voicemail, his casual recorded voice telling her he was unavailable. Elena felt tears freeze on her cheeks as snow began to fall harder. She had spent the day visiting her grandmother Rosa at the hospice 3 hours north of the city. Rosa had been so happy to see her, so insistent that Elena returned to the city to spend Christmas with Tyler. If only her grandmother knew the truth. That Tyler forgot important dates, that he made her feel invisible even when they were together, that she had stayed with him simply because being alone seemed more frightening than being with someone who didn't truly see her. Her fingers had lost all feeling 20 minutes ago. Her legs trembled uncontrollably. Elena knew somewhere in the back of her freezing mind that this was dangerous, that hypothermia was setting in, but exhaustion pulled at her consciousness like a heavy blanket. Maybe she could just close her eyes for a moment. The sound of an engine broke through her fading awareness. Elena forced her eyes open, her vision blurred by cold and tears. A sleek black car was pulling up to the curb, its headlights cutting through the falling snow. The engine stopped. For several heartbeats, nothing happened. Then the driver's door opened, and a man stepped out into the winter night. He was tall, wearing an expensive charcoal suit under a wool coat that probably cost more than Elena made in 3 months. Snow immediately began gathering in his dark hair and on his broad shoulders. He stood there, scanning the empty platform, and then his eyes found her. They were striking even in the dim light. Deep blue, the color of the ocean before storm. For a frozen moment, they simply looked at each other. Elena watched his expression shift from neutral to concerned as he took in the scene. The girl alone on the bench, the snow accumulating around her, the empty station, the desperation written in every line of her shaking body. His jaw tightened, and he moved toward her with purposeful strides. "Are you all right?" His voice was deep, rough with genuine alarm. Elena tried to answer, but her teeth were chattering so violently the words came out broken and incomprehensible. She managed something that sounded vaguely like waiting for someone, but they both knew it was a lie. The man's eyes swept the deserted parking lot, the snow that was now several inches deep. "How long have you been out here?" She couldn't form an answer. Her mind felt sluggish, wrapped in cotton. He crouched down in front of her, bringing himself to eye level, and she saw his expression shift to something sharper. "Fear. Your lips are blue. You're going into hypothermia." Before Elena could protest, before she could even process what was happening, he was shrugging out of his expensive coat. He draped it over her shoulders, and the warmth that clung to the fabric hit her like a physical wave. Elena almost cried from the relief and the pain as her frozen skin burned with returning sensation. "Come with me." It wasn't a request. His tone was firm, but not harsh, commanding but gentle. "I'll protect you." Every safety lesson Elena had ever learned screamed in her head. Don't get in cars with strangers. Don't trust men you don't know. Don't be stupid. But as she looked into those deep blue eyes, eyes that actually saw her instead of looking past her like everyone else had tonight, something inside her chest shifted. "I don't know you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The man crouched lower, his expression softening. "My name is Dominic Ashford." His voice was steady calm. "And you're freezing to death on Christmas Eve. We can do proper introductions after I make sure you survive the night." There was the faintest hint of dry humor in his tone, but the worry beneath it was absolute. Elena looked at his outstretched hand. Strong, steady, offering salvation. She looked back at the empty station behind her, the place where Tyler had never come, the place where she had almost let herself disappear into the cold. She thought about dying alone in the snow, about never seeing another sunrise, about all the books she would never read and all the life she would never live. And she made the most impulsive decision of her careful, cautious existence. She took his hand. His grip was warm, solid, real. He helped her to her feet, keeping a firm hold on her arm when her legs buckled beneath her. The world tilted dangerously, and she felt his other hand steady her back with surprising gentleness. Elena, she managed to say. My name is Elena Rivera. Aurikt, Elena. Dominic guided her toward the car, his movements both gentle and efficient. Let's get you somewhere warm. He opened the passenger door, and heat rushed out like a blessing. The interior was luxury itself, leather seats soft beneath her as she collapsed into them. Dominic leaned across to buckle her seatbelt, his movements careful and respectful, never invasive. Then he was in the driver's seat, the car pulling away from the curb with smooth power. Elena turned to look back at the station, watching the place where she had almost died grow smaller in the distance. Tyler had never come, but someone else had, and somehow that changed everything. The car ride was a blur of warmth and confusion. Elena was shaking so hard her bones ached. Dominic drove in focused silence, but she caught him checking on her repeatedly, his jaw tight with concern. Still with me? He asked after several minutes. Elena tried to nod, but even that small movement felt exhausting. Dominic cursed softly under his breath and pressed harder on the accelerator. 5 minutes. Hold on for 5 more minutes. The car stopped in front of a high-rise Elena recognized from magazines. One of the most exclusive buildings in the city, where apartments cost millions and privacy was guaranteed. Dominic got out and opened her door, but when Elena tried to stand, her legs refused to cooperate. Without hesitation, he lifted her into his arms. I can walk, Elena protested weakly, though they both knew it was untrue. No, you can't, Dominic replied simply. He carried her through a marble lobby past a doorman who looked surprised but asked no questions, straight into a private elevator. The doors closed, and reality began to penetrate Elena's foggy mind. She was in the arms of a complete stranger, being taken to his apartment. She should be terrified, but all she felt was the warmth radiating through his suit, the strength of his arms holding her securely, and a strange, inexplicable sense of safety. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse that took Elena's breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the glittering city below. Sleek, modern furniture filled the space with elegant minimalism. A perfectly decorated Christmas tree stood in the corner, its lights twinkling softly. Dominic carried her straight to the bathroom and turned on the shower, carefully adjusting the temperature. You need hot water now, he said, turning to face her. Can you manage on your own? Elena nodded, though she wasn't entirely sure. I'll bring you dry clothes. 5 minutes. He closed the door behind him, giving her privacy. But when Elena tried to remove her soaked jacket, her numb fingers couldn't grip the zipper. Frustration and exhaustion overwhelmed her, and tears came hot and fast. She was pathetic, abandoned, dependent on a stranger's kindness on Christmas Eve. A soft knock. Elena, are you okay? She couldn't answer. Didn't trust her voice not to break completely. The door opened slightly. I'm coming in. Tell me if you're uncomfortable. Silence. Dominic entered, his eyes carefully focused on her face. When he saw she was still fully dressed and shaking violently, his expression softened with understanding. Let me help, he said quietly. With surprisingly gentle hands, he helped her remove the soaked jacket, then the sweater underneath, leaving her in her blouse and maintaining her dignity. Can you handle the rest? Elena nodded. I'll be right outside. Call if you need anything. 20 minutes later, Elena emerged wrapped in a bathrobe 3 times her size, her hair damp, her skin finally pink instead of blue. Dominic was in the kitchen, and the smell of hot chocolate filled the air. When he saw her, he stopped what he was doing, relief flooding his features. Better. Much, Elena whispered. Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't stopped. She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't want to think about it. Dominic brought 2 mugs to the living room and gestured to the couch. Elena sat, pulling the robe tighter around herself. He took the armchair across from her, keeping a respectful distance that made her feel safer somehow. Want to tell me what happened tonight? The question was gentle but direct. Elena stared at the mug, warming her hands. She could lie. She should lie. But something about the way Dominic looked at her, without judgment, without pity, just genuine concern, made the truth spill out. My boyfriend was supposed to pick me up from the station. He never came. My phone died. My wallet was stolen on the subway. I had nowhere to go. Her voice cracked, and I think he just didn't care enough to remember. The silence that followed felt heavy. Then Dominic spoke, and there was controlled anger in his voice. What kind of man leaves someone he supposedly cares about freezing alone on Christmas Eve? Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. The kind who never really loved me, I suppose. Saying it out loud to this stranger was both devastating and liberating. Elena woke disoriented, her mind foggy with sleep. For several confused moments, she didn't recognize her surroundings. The bed was too soft, the room too large. The morning light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a view of skyscrapers instead of her usual cramped apartment's brick wall. Then memory flooded back. The snow, the station, Dominic Ashford carrying her to safety. She sat up quickly, her heart racing. What time was it? How long had she been asleep? She was wearing an oversized t-shirt that clearly belonged to Dominic, and the realization made her cheeks flush with heat. A gentle knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Elena, are you awake? Dominic's voice came through the door, careful and respectful. Yes, she managed, her voice rough from sleep. The door opened, and Dominic entered carrying a breakfast tray. Coffee, toast, scrambled eggs, fresh fruit arranged with surprising care. Thought you might be hungry, he said, placing the tray on the bedside table. In the morning light, Elena really saw him for the first time. He was younger than she'd initially thought, maybe early 30s, with strong features and those remarkable blue eyes that seemed to see straight through her carefully constructed walls. He wore dark jeans and a simple gray sweater, somehow looking both casual and expensive. What time is it? Elena asked, reaching for the coffee gratefully. Almost noon. You slept nearly 12 hours. He sat in a chair by the window, maintaining that respectful distance. Your body needed the rest. I'm so sorry, Elena said quickly, embarrassment washing over her. I've completely invaded your Christmas. You probably had plans, and I didn't, Dominic interrupted gently. I was returning from a business dinner when I saw you, and I'm glad I stopped. Why? The question escaped before Elena could stop it. Dominic was quiet for a moment, his gaze thoughtful. Because no one deserves to be alone and freezing on Christmas Eve. And because something about you made me stop the car. Normally, I would have called emergency services and kept driving. But I couldn't leave you there. The air between them felt charged with something Elena couldn't name. Her phone, which Dominic had charged overnight, suddenly buzzed on the nightstand. She picked it up, and her stomach dropped when she saw the screen. Tyler, 23 missed calls, 37 messages. She opened the most recent one with trembling fingers. Where are you? I came to get you this morning, and you weren't there. This is ridiculous, Elena. Call me now. Elena felt rage burn through her chest, hot and pure. He had come this morning, 12 hours too late. 12 hours after she'd spent the night freezing, after she'd nearly died waiting for him. Everything okay? Dominic's voice was careful. Elena looked at him, this man who was essentially a stranger, but who had shown more care in one night than Tyler had in 18 months. It's Tyler, my boyfriend. She couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. He finally showed up this morning, 12 hours late. Dominic said nothing, just waited with that patient silence that somehow gave her courage. Elena dialed Tyler's number. He answered on the first ring. Elena, whose phone are you using? Where the hell are you? That's what you're asking? Her voice shook. You were supposed to pick me up last night, Tyler. Last night. I waited in the snow for hours. My phone died. Where were you? A pause. Then Tyler sighed. Actually sighed like she was being unreasonable. Look, babe, something came up. The guys wanted to hit the bar for Christmas Eve drinks. I figured you'd just catch an Uber or something. You're always so independent. The room tilted. He hadn't forgotten. He had chosen a bar and his friends over making sure she was safe. I didn't have my wallet, Elena whispered. It was stolen. Well, how was I supposed to know that? Tyler's tone shifted to defensive irritation. You can't expect me to read your mind. Are you seriously calling to guilt trip me about this? It's Christmas, Elena. Elena looked at Dominic, who sat watching her with an expression of controlled fury on behalf of someone he barely knew. We're done, Tyler. The words came out steady, final, stronger than she felt. Don't call me again. Don't text me. We're finished. What? Elena, don't be dramatic. Come on. She ended the call, her hands shaking. She had just ended an 18-month relationship in 30 seconds. She should feel scared, should feel regret, but all she felt was light, as if she'd released a weight she'd been carrying for far too long. Are you okay? Dominic asked gently. Elena looked at him, really looked at the genuine concern in his eyes, the way he'd maintained respectful boundaries even in his own home, the way he'd stopped when everyone else had simply driven past. I don't know, she admitted honestly, but I think I will be. The smile Dominic gave her was small but transformative. Good, because I made way too much food for one person, and it would be a shame to waste Christmas dinner. There was an invitation there, clear but not pushy. Spend the day together. Two strangers connected by a moment of desperate need. Elena knew she should leave, return to her small apartment, process everything that had happened. But when Dominic stood and extended his hand in that gesture that was becoming familiar, she took it without hesitation. Christmas dinner sounds perfect. The afternoon unfolded with surprising ease. They ate at Dominic's elegant dining table while snow continued to fall softly outside, the entire city wrapped in peaceful silence. The food was delicious, but what surprised Elena most was the conversation. They talked about everything. Dominic told her about growing up as an only child to parents who were more interested in their own careers than their son, about building his company from nothing in his 20s as a way to prove his worth to people who were never paying attention anyway. Ashford Technologies, he explained when Elena asked. We develop software for medical diagnostics, programs that help doctors catch diseases earlier, save lives. There was pride in his voice, but underneath it, Elena heard something else. A loneliness that matched her own. What about you? Dominic asked. What do you do when you're not being abandoned at train stations? Elena laughed despite the sting of the question. I work at the Central Library downtown. Nothing glamorous, but I love it. I love being surrounded by stories, by all those different worlds and lives contained in pages. Books let you escape anywhere, be anyone. Escapism, Dominic observed, not as judgment, but as understanding. Sometimes reality is too much, Elena said softly. Sometimes it is, Dominic agreed, and their eyes met across the table with sudden, profound understanding. After dinner, they moved to the living room. Dominic started the fireplace with a remote control, and Elena couldn't help but laugh. Of course you have a remote-controlled fireplace. Are you mocking my technology? There was humor in his voice. Maybe a little. They sat on the couch, not quite close, but not distant either. Elena picked up a framed photograph from the side table. A younger Dominic with a beautiful woman who had the same blue eyes. Your mother? She asked. She was. Dominic's voice grew quieter. She died 4 years ago. Heart attack. Sudden. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have. No, it's okay. Dominic took the photo, looking at it with clear affection. She was incredible. Always told me I worked too much, that I needed to find someone to share my life with instead of hiding behind business deals. He laughed without humor. I think she'd be disappointed I'm still alone. Why are you? The question escaped before Elena could stop it. Sorry, that's too personal. Because it's easier, Dominic answered with startling honesty. Relationships require vulnerability, trust. And in my world, trust is dangerous. People want things from you when you're successful. He looked at her intently. But you understand that, don't you? That's why you stayed with Tyler, even when he clearly didn't value you. Because being alone seemed scarier than being with the wrong person. The words hit Elena like a physical blow because they were absolutely true. How do you know that? She whispered. Dominic studied her for a long moment. Because I recognize it. That fear of not being enough. Of seeking external validation because the internal voice is so critical. He leaned slightly closer. But can I tell you something I learned building a company from nothing? Elena nodded, unable to speak. You don't need someone else to make you whole, Elena. You're already complete. You just need to believe it. His voice was firm, certain. Last night in that snow, you didn't give up. Today, you ended a relationship that was destroying you piece by piece. That takes real courage. Tears burned in Elena's eyes. No one had ever said anything like that to her. No one had ever seen her this clearly. Don't diminish yourself just because someone was too blind to see your worth, Dominic said quietly. The silence that followed felt electric. Elena was acutely aware of how close they were now, how his warmth seemed to fill all the space between them, how her heart was racing in a way that had nothing to do with fear. I should probably go, she said suddenly, standing up, because if she stayed one more minute, she might do something impulsive like lean in and discover if his lips were as gentle as his words. Dominic stood too. Do you have somewhere safe to go? The question was gentle but direct. Elena thought about her tiny apartment, cold and full of memories of Tyler, of feeling small and unimportant. I have an apartment, she said. That's not what I asked. Dominic watched her carefully. Stay, at least for tonight. I have guest rooms. And tomorrow, if you want to leave, I won't stop you. But I'd feel better knowing you're somewhere warm and safe. Elena knew she should refuse. But when she looked around at this warm sanctuary, at the glowing tree, at Dominic watching her with those ocean blue eyes that made her feel seen for the first time in years, she realized she didn't want to leave. Not yet. Okay, she whispered. One more night. The smile Dominic gave her was worth every moment of uncertainty. 3 days had passed since that frozen Christmas Eve, and Elena was still at the penthouse. What had started as one night had stretched into something neither of them seemed willing to end. She woke each morning to the smell of coffee and breakfast. Dominic, she discovered, was an early riser who worked from home when he could. They'd fallen into an easy rhythm that felt both strange and perfectly natural. This morning, Elena found him in his home office, surrounded by multiple monitors displaying complex data she didn't understand. He looked up when she appeared in the doorway, his face immediately softening. Good morning. There's French toast in the kitchen. You're going to spoil me, Elena said, though she was already heading toward the promised breakfast. That's the plan, Dominic called after her, and something in his tone made her heart skip. After breakfast, Elena settled on the couch with her laptop. She'd started working remotely, handling library cataloging and digital archival projects from Dominic's apartment. It was surprisingly easy to focus here, with the city spread out below and soft music playing in the background. Around noon, Dominic emerged from his office and sat beside her. Want to take a break? I was thinking we could go out. There's something I want to show you. 20 minutes later, they were walking through the snowy city streets. Dominic had loaned her a proper winter coat, warm and expensive, and for the first time in days, Elena felt completely comfortable in the cold. He led her to a small used bookstore tucked between two modern buildings, a place that looked like it had existed for decades while the world changed around it. How did you know? Elena breathed, already moving toward the door. You mentioned you love books. Thought you might like this place. Dominic held the door open, and Elena stepped into paradise. The next hour disappeared as Elena explored every shelf, every corner of the cramped, wonderful space. Dominic followed, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read, but that made her feel warm all over. She found a first edition of her favorite novel and gasped. I've been looking for this for years. Then it's yours, Dominic said simply, taking it from her hands and heading to the counter. Dominic, no, it's too expensive. Elena. He turned to face her, his expression serious. Let me do this. Please. You've given me something much more valuable these past few days. What could I possibly have given you? Elena asked, genuinely confused. Company, laughter, a reason to actually enjoy Christmas instead of treating it like another day on the calendar. His voice was soft. You've reminded me what it feels like to have someone to share things with. Elena's throat tightened with emotion. Before she could respond, Dominic had already paid and was handing her the wrapped book. They walked back through the snowy streets, their shoulders occasionally brushing, neither of them pulling away. When they reached the building, Dominic paused at the entrance. Elena, I need to tell you something. Her heart began to race. Okay, I know this situation is unconventional. I know we barely know each other, but these past few days have been the best I've had in years. He turned to face her fully. I don't want you to leave. Not tomorrow, not next week. Stay as long as you want. Stay as long as you need. Dominic, I'm not asking for anything, he continued quickly. I'm not expecting anything. I just want you to know that you have a place here. With me. For however long you want it. Elena looked up at this man who had saved her life, who made her breakfast every morning, who had taken her to a bookstore just because he knew it would make her smile. This man who saw her, really saw her, in a way no one ever had. What if people talk? She asked quietly. What if they think? Let them think whatever they want, Dominic interrupted gently. The only opinions that matter are ours. And I know what I want. What do you want? Elena's voice was barely a whisper. You. Here. Safe. Happy. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch sending electricity through her entire body. I want to know what makes you laugh. I want to learn your favorite books and your least favorite foods and what you dream about when you sleep. I want. He stopped, seeming to struggle with his words. I want the chance to see where this goes. If you'll let me. Elena felt tears gathering in her eyes, but they were different from the tears she'd cried in the snow. These were warm, hopeful tears. I'm scared, she admitted. I just got out of something that hurt me. What if I'm not ready? What if I mess this up? Then we figure out together, Dominic said simply. Elena, I'm not Tyler. I'm not going to leave you waiting in the cold. I'm not going to make you feel invisible or unimportant. You deserve someone who sees how incredible you are, and I'd like the chance to be that person. You already are, Elena whispered, and then she was closing the distance between them, standing on her toes, pressing her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, both of them testing this new territory. Then Dominic's arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer, and the kiss deepened into something that felt like coming home. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. Stay, he whispered. Please stay. Okay, Elena breathed. I'll stay. The next few weeks passed in a blur of discovery. Elena officially moved her belongings from her old apartment, though she didn't have much. Dominic cleared space in his closet, gave her a drawer in the bathroom, made room for her in his life with such ease it felt like she'd always belonged there. She met his business partners at a New Year's Eve party, and they treated her with surprising warmth. She learned that Dominic was known for being brilliant but distant, that no one had ever seen him smile the way he did when he looked at her. In mid-January, Dominic drove her to visit her grandmother Rosa at the hospice. The older woman's eyes had widened when she saw them together, saw the way Dominic held Elena's hand, the way he spoke to Rosa with genuine respect and interest. When they were leaving, Rosa had pulled Elena aside. That man loves you, Mija. I can see it in the way he looks at you, like you're the most precious thing in his world. It's still new. Elena had protested, but her heart had soared. Love doesn't follow a timeline, Rosa said wisely. Sometimes the right person shows up exactly when you need them most. In February, on a snowy evening that reminded Elena of the night they'd met, Dominic took her back to the train station. She tensed, memories flooding back, but he squeezed her hand. I wanted to show you something, he said, leading her to the exact bench where he'd found her. There was a small plaque there now, newly installed. Elena read it through tears. This bench honors those who help strangers in need. May we all be brave enough to stop when others need us most. You did this. Elena whispered. We did, Dominic corrected. I made the donation, but you inspired it. You taught me that being vulnerable isn't weakness, that asking for help takes courage, that letting someone in is the bravest thing we can do. Elena turned to face him, This man who had saved her life and given her a home and shown her what real love looked like. I love you, she said, the words coming easily now. I love you, Dominic Ashford. His smile was brilliant, transforming his entire face. I love you too, Elena Rivera. I loved you from the moment I saw you in the snow and knew I couldn't drive away. I loved you when you cried in my bathroom and when you laughed at my remote control fireplace. I love you more every single day. He kissed her there at the station where their story had begun, while snow fell around them like a blessing. They had started in the cold, two lonely people colliding on the worst night of Elena's life. But from that frozen beginning had grown something warm and true and permanent. Elena had thought no one would notice her that Christmas Eve. She'd been wrong. Dominic had noticed. He had stopped. He had stayed. And in doing so, he had given her the greatest gift she'd ever received, the chance to be truly, completely, perfectly seen. As they drove back to the penthouse, their hands intertwined, Elena looked at the city lights reflecting off the snow and smiled. She had been abandoned once, left alone in the cold, but she had been found by someone who would never let her freeze again. And that made all the difference.